Welcome to our series on the new code of professional practice. In this session, we're exploring delivery of care, which brings together key aspects of professional practice: patient-centred care, diagnostic imaging, and evidence-based decision-making. I'm joined once again by Nick Jones, Chief Executive and Registrar at the GCC, and Andrew Fielding, Insights and Policy Officer. Thank you both for being here again.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
Good to see you, Julia.
Of course. So let's start off then with patient-centred care. It feels very much like that thread runs entirely through the new code. What can you speak to on that?
Patient-centred care is the foundation of safe and effective care. And I think what's really important is that care is tailored to the patient, to their goals, to their aspirations, and so on. I speak to a lot of chiropractors up and down the land, and I really enjoy when they tell me the kind of the puzzle that they're seeking to solve with the patient, trying different things, different techniques, different aspects of care, rather than seeing a standard patient in front of them and a one-size-fits-all approach.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it's throughout the whole code. It's one of those core 4 values that the whole of the code is built on, and that came from patients and from chiropractors. That was so important to everybody involved in the profession. In terms of what it means in practice, the Principle D, which is the section of the code that talks about it, we've really tried to clarify this kind of the stages of providing care. So that first piece, when you first see the patient, making the assessment, understanding what's important to them, understanding where you can help, then you make your diagnosis or your rationale for care. Then we've got providing a plan of care. So it's the next stage is, so you understand what's happening, and then what can you do to help? Getting the buy-in from that patient. But it's so important as well to keep going back to that original plan of care and saying, how are we progressing against that? Doing that evaluation, making sure that it's that the patient can see the progress and you can see the progress as a chiropractor. When we're setting these standards, they're set at a level where we know every chiropractor can meet them, and most already do. But it's thinking about how you're doing that, and just taking that moment to sort of step back and look at the whole of your care provision and understanding it through that lens. And
within the code, that lens speaks to decision for treatment and those outcomes being a collaborative idea between the chiropractor and the patient. So it's a mutual responsibility.
Absolutely.
Great.
The concept of shared goals is an important one.
And shared decision making, having those conversations.
Okay. Let's move on now to diagnostic imaging. What are the key expectations with that?
Imaging, whatever form it takes, is one of the available diagnostic tools to the clinician, where it's clinically justified. I think that's the important point. And like all interventions, imaging has its risks, and it's important that those risks are evaluated against the benefits and thought about in that way.
Okay, so justification is an important piece when it comes
really
to imaging.
Important,
Yeah,
Okay.
You've got to have that clinical justification. You've got to record what you've done and why you've done it, and at the end, you've got to be able to report back to the patient. What have you found? What was the benefit of taking an image? But as Nick says, it's one of the tools in your armoury as a chiropractor. It's not the only one. We're seeing so much progression in all the different technologies that it is having that decision about what is the right tool for the job here, and is this going to confirm something I already know, or is this actually going to add to the whole assessment picture?
And does the code go into any detail or expectations about the safety principles expected upon chiropractors when using this tool?
The expectations of a chiropractor using imaging equipment are the same as any other healthcare practitioner using imaging equipment. So meeting the standards under things like IRMA and having that clinical justification, making sure that the image is actually interpreted and used.
And we've got some good supporting guidance around imaging, haven't we, Andrew?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
All right. Can we talk now about evidence-based practice? This is another major part of delivery of care. How does it pertain to the code, and what does it refer to?
Well, I think all healthcare has to be based on the best available evidence, and I think patients expect that to be the case. And I think knowing that is a reassuring basis on which that interaction takes place.
That idea of best available evidence is is so central to the delivery of care and the patient's understanding of what's happening. And there will be occasions where, if the evidence isn't there, but you still feel it's appropriate to deliver that care, that's fine, as long as the patient understands what are you proposing to do and why. What's your thinking behind it? What's your rationale? What evidence is there?
And the patient's preferences come to play there.
And the patient's preferences absolutely come to play. That comes back to that shared decision making, having the conversation. Because without the conversation, they can't give you that valid consent to the care.
And it's like, once you've set that plan, it's not as if it's stuck in stone.
Oh, absolutely
It needs to
not.
be adaptive.
You need to be adapting. You need to be tailoring the care, seeing what's happening, seeing how the patient is reacting in themselves, and also looking at those goals as well. If you're hitting the goals, fantastic. What can you do next? Where are you going next with the patient? What's the patient's aspirations for their health and their body?
We've talked about how important it is to have shared decision making or collaboration between chiropractor and patient, but of course that's not the extent of it. Collaboration is also relevant for the chiropractor with other healthcare professionals and the wider industry and infrastructure at large. How does the code speak to collaboration as a principle?
Well, we think collaboration is pretty central, so no one is an island. I think patients expect their healthcare practitioners to be communicating with each other in the interests of the patient. So rather than a simple one-to-one relationship and leave it there, it's one which is much more interrelated to the wider healthcare system. And we know that most chiropractors are operating in the commercial environment, working as private practitioners, but that doesn't prevent or hinder the relationships that can be fostered in the interest of the patient locally.
So there's a sort of holistic sense
That's
of
right.
care with everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's also about thinking, who are the professionals involved in the other professionals involved in the care of the patient. I've spoken to chiropractors who've had long conversations with dentists, for instance. You think you've still got issues around neck, around jaws, all that sort of stuff. It's not just talking to the GP, for instance. It is thinking about everybody that is providing care, helping that patient to live the best life they can with the body and the physicality they've got, and working right across that sphere of all those providers to help that patient. And I think the other concern we have, or thing to look out for, you can't rely on the patient to always be the go-between. Actually just know who the professionals involved in that patient's life are, have those conversations. Absolutely, a patient is the expert in their own condition, but a conversation professional to get that understanding, that's so important. This can be so valuable to providing that safe clinical care.
We're now joined by Gay Swaite, Associate Professor and Head of the Chiropractic Curriculum at Coventry University and Director of Research for the Royal College of Chiropractors, to explore some common questions that chiropractors have about delivering care under the new code. Gay also helped the GCC develop sections of the new code. So welcome, Gay. Nice to have you join us.
Thank you very much. It's really nice to be here.
So a registrant asked about section D7, which says chiropractors must inform patients of the risks and benefits of the proposed plan of care. They wanted to know how best to present potential risks and whether using percentages or ratios is the right approach. So how should chiropractors be discussing risks with patients?
That's a great question, and it is something many practitioners find challenging. There isn't a single correct format, but the goal is understanding by each patient, not just delivering the information. Usually, explaining risks in plain language and context works best. For example, this side effect is rare, perhaps 1 in several thousand treatments. Using percentage or ratios can help, but only if they come from reliable peer-reviewed data and you're confident in their accuracy. What matters most is being honest about known risks and open about uncertainty, tailoring the discussion to each patient's circumstances. Patients are quite pragmatic about risks and usually value the conversation. You can also include written information in your paperwork or consent forms, but the tailored conversation itself in your own words and ensuring the patient has understood is what ensures valid consent.
And how can chiropractors make patient-centred care a reality in busy clinics?
Patient-centred care is individualised and communication is really the key. It starts with active listening. A patient said that they want to be heard and not just listened to, and that really sums it up. So you can have a what matters most to you conversation, summarise back what you've heard and agree on goals together. And even short consultations can be person-centred if the focus is on collaboration and not instruction.
Right. And Andrew, what should chiropractors do if there's limited or even conflicting evidence for a particular treatment?
It's really difficult, isn't it? But I think the key part to this is it's your professional judgment as a chiropractor. You need to be transparent with the patient. You need to explain the different positions and have an understanding of it. And it's then having that discussion and making those decisions together. But as a chiropractor, it's your role to explain that uncertainty and to understand where those uncertainties lie.
And should the professional in the situation be documenting or making a note of
Absolutely, yeah. All the way through this, the important thing is being able to not only make those decisions, but show how you've made those decisions.
Right. And Gay, if I can come back to you, how should chiropractors decide when to refer for imaging or other investigations?
Use evidence-based criteria such as clinical guidelines and clinical reasoning. If the results will change management of the patient, imaging may be justified. If not, it probably isn't necessary, and evidence does show that unwarranted imaging can harm patient outcomes. And always explain that decision to the patient, whether you order imaging or decide it's not needed.
Great. And then Nick, what would you say is your key message to chiropractors about delivering care under this new code?
I think simply put, be guided by the evidence, be transparent about the quality of that evidence and tailor your approach.
Perfect. Well, before I let you all go, could I do what I like to do and just get one takeaway from each of you to leave everyone reflecting with? Andrew, I'll come to you first.
I think to echo what Nick was just saying, it's about staying curious and being led by the evidence, looking out for the evidence, keeping up to date with the evidence and using that to guide your professional judgment.
Perfect. Nick?
See the patient in front of you. There's a clue in the name, patient-centred care.
Right. And Gay?
My takeaway would be to make consent a conversation, not a form, and real understanding is what makes care safe and ethical.
Thank you. And thank you to you gents with me in the studio. Great to have your insights, as always. You can find the full code of professional practice on our website at gcc-uk.org. The GCC newsletter will continue to share updates to help you prepare for the new code, and you'll be able to find supporting content and guidance on our social media channels. Thanks for watching.